Welcome, flower lovers. Today on the podcast, we are welcoming our friend Heidi Smith. And Heidi has joined us on the Flower Essence podcast before in the way back on episode 28, where we talked to her about her wonderful previous book, The Bloom Book. And today we'll be talking to her about her newest book, The Uncommon Book of Prayer. And we're really excited to have this conversation. Heidi is a psychosomatic therapist, registered herbalist, flower essence practitioner, and author. So, Rochana and I really welcome you, and we're really happy to be speaking to you today.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be back.
It's great to see you, Heidi, and I'm really looking forward to diving into this new work of yours in which you do also bring the flower essences in with this concept of prayer. So, would love to hear more about it.
Thanks, Ro. Yes, this book was published last fall in October of 2024. It was, I guess, after the publication of my first book, The Bloom Book. We were still in COVID time. And there were just a number of things hitting at once. And like for many, it was a very stressful time. I was needing to deeply lean into my spiritual and healing practices to show up for myself, for my people, my community. And I just found myself kind of reapproaching prayer in a new way, and it started to reveal itself in its own kind of modality, I guess. And it had always been part of my sessions with clients, my medicine making. I've always had a personal relationship to prayer. But I started to think about it in terms of its own methodology. And also, I'm naturally attracted to the feminine and the mystery and the subtle, energetic, and prayer is all of those things. I also come from a very conservative environment, religious, that never really resonated with me. But I did have a relationship with prayer, as many of us do. Um, it's a charged word, and I thought, what an interesting topic to reframe it and make it more accessible and inclusive for people. And at this point in time in my work, I'm very interested in the connecting threads and what we as humanity and as sentient beings have in common. Not just what differentiates us or what separates us. So I thought what would be interesting to take a more syncretic approach to understanding prayer cross-culturally. So yeah, the book just started revealing itself to me.
Since prayer is a polarizing term and we're talking about it in terms of different definitions in even just what you had presented, what you grew up with, and then being attracted to more goddess practices and different kinds of looking at different kinds of cultures around the world and what they're doing. How do you now define prayer, and has it changed throughout this work?
hmm Yeah, so to simplify, I use the words prayer, affirmation, meditation, resonant language, spell work. I use those all interchangeably. And I remember having this meeting with my editors at my publisher about should we use the word prayer because it can be such a triggering word for people. And it felt okay for me, and that's my word. And if you have a different word, then great, use that word. And I decided to land on a term that felt better for me. And so I define it as an active agreement that you make between your soul and the divine, whatever that means to you. And it's a sacred practice that can be called upon to bring about states of grace, healing, and change.
And I have to say, when I read that in the book, I really loved it. And that is was very impactful to me in turning around how I use that term of prayer.
Oh, good. I'm glad it resonated.
Yeah, there's this quality of communication that for me, because I to be candid, right? I mean, this is really the word prayer is a really loaded one for me personally. I'm a fundamentalist cult survivor, and it's really tough. It's really it brings up a lot of stuff that's really hard. And so for me to kind of frame it differently into a communication, because I'm comfortable with communication, it's like that's my thing. I love to communicate and I love to communicate with nature. And for me, that's my pathway to the divine. So being able to connect to the spirits of plants, even even more directly, like to maybe that Devic level of plants, that is my connection to the divine, because the the God word is a really tough one.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I do think that is true for a number of people, unfortunately. And in my work, I work with complex trauma survivors, and a lot of those people are survivors of narcissistic abuse. And I consider cults to be narcissistic systems. So maybe you do too. So there is a lot of overlap there. And everybody gets to choose what their work is. And so I understand if you see my book and you see that word, you need to walk away. I totally respect that. And my hope is that just because something is secular doesn't mean that it can't be sacred. And that if you feel up for it, you can consider what I'm offering and reframe prayer for yourself and reclaim that for yourself. And I think that can be really healing and empowering because what one of the harms of surviving a cult or narcissistic abuse is that you were having power misused against you and your choice was removed. And that included what you believed. And so to be able to stand in your own truth and beliefs um, in an embodied way, that is a repair. So I'm hopefully facilitating that in this book and with this work.
I really appreciate that you're bringing this conversation forward in a way that feels really embodied and grounded, and that you're offering a lot of options, and that you're offering a lot of options in the languaging and in the way you speak to it, because you, like you were mentioning, you do have a lot of experience in working with people who have had these levels of complex trauma. How do you begin that conversation with the client of describing this work on some level of reconnecting them to what was taken from them?
Yeah. So most of my clients are complex trauma survivors, and what that means is they were in environments for extended periods of time that were unsafe. And that could have been in an abusive family system, that could have been in a cult or religionized trauma, that could have been being mistreated within the educational or medical industrial complex. And they are either making their way out or they're out and they're kind of dealing with the aftermath. And um, when I began my private practice about 11 years ago, I decided that I wanted to start every session with a prayer and a grounding. And this felt a little controversial at first. And I remember thinking, am I allowed to do this? And I felt, yes, I am. This is my practice, and I get to create, co-create it in the way that feels right for me. And as long as I'm asking for permission, then that feels appropriate. And so I always ask permission from the client, and I always ask permission when I make medicine for the client or anyone. I'm saying, do I have permission to connect with your spirit and your spirit team? Those are your angels, your guides, and your ancestors. And then that is what is co-creative. It's not just me at the physical self 3D level and you at that level. It's much more dynamic than that. And so I think people that are drawn to my work are it's a pretty self-selecting crew already. And if they're not into that, I totally respect it. But at this point, if you're not comfortable with that, I might not be the best fit for you because this is a big part of my work. And if you're ambivalent, totally fair, like let's work with that. That's so interesting. And I think that's a really interesting entry point to work with that ambivalence. I think that's so healthy. I know I had to work through my ambivalence. Um, so yeah, I think that's part of it. And I see it as if you think of like the biopsychosocial spiritual model of healing, I think it's a vital part of that spiritual level of the therapeutic alliance.
I really appreciate that perspective. And in the book, the way that you lay it out and the examples that you give, there's quite a few prayer examples and places where you match that with like appropriate flower essences. So, to our listeners who may be wondering, how do flower essences fit with affirmations, prayer, and any kind of intentional work? I mean, I think we all already gravitate to that and already use flower essence with intention, but in a little bit more formally with a prayer. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, how you like to do that.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I do feel that prayer is such an easy, natural complement to flower essences, and they both feel so vibrational and subtle, energetic, and feminine and yin. And they're part of the medicine making already. Um, and people are always asking me how to take flower essences, and also people were asking me how to pray. And I thought, oh, what an interesting inquiry. And let's offer some more structure for this because we know that when we're working with flower essences, there's different applications and there's different ways to potentize them and amplify them. So I had always loved working with like breath work or creating like a mantra to go with the flower essence because I think of flower essence as a kind of like liquid attunement. So it's like you're reminding your body, okay, we're doing something different now. We're inviting this process of change. And so language, if we think about language as the agreements that we make with our life situations, then it's just another way to um, like work in the co-creative field with the flower essences to create these changes that maybe we are intending consciously, or maybe we don't know, we're just open to the process, or both. So yes, I love pairing them with simple prayers or long form prayers too. I offer the structure to create both in my book. I also love integrating breath work, just anything to create the more time and space you give these medicines to work, I think they, the better their efficacy. And the same goes with prayer. It's like any practice you put time in, the better result you're going to see. So the same is true for this process, and it's a way to bring more intentionality and also creativity to it.
Absolutely. As a practitioner, when I create a custom formula for a client, I always write the intention, and it's really such a part of the process. And you
Mhm.
could consider that prayer, that intention, and how it's written out. I give it to the client and tell them, give them some affirmations that they can repeat when they're taking the formula. And if it's optional, if they're not into affirmations, that's fine. But
Mhm.
I feel like it is something that's so helpful in creating that resonance and connecting with the plants and the flowers and reminding the self, the soul, what it is trying to accomplish. And as you're doing that and connecting to the plants, that is a prayer. It's a prayer to the you know it it's a connection with these plant allies. And I've been
Mhm.
doing it for so long, lots of times for myself now, I don't even take the flower essence, but I just kind of put that prayer out. If
Mhm.
I'm still getting used to calling it that. So every time I say it, I need to practice, I guess. But every time I work with these or think about plants, these are my allies, they're like guides for me. And um, and you could like consider it that way. And I like in your book how you do talk about that resonance, because I've always felt that that flower essences and intention are working with those fields. And you also mention about having this bringing in the how you feel and the emotion into it, connecting with the heart space and bringing the feeling into that. And that's something that I learned when I used to write spells. I used to write spells all the
Mhm.
time in a magical space. And I found that when I did that, when I brought my heart into it and in a very I took my ego out and brought my heart into it in a very coherent, connected place, vulnerable place,
Mhm.
that was true, then those spells, those prayers really actually worked. And that's a really important point, I think, and the part that might be missing from a lot of teachings.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love that you yourself write the affirmations for your clients. And um, thank you also for mentioning that connection to the flower essences, because that uh, that was part of studying the Flower Essence Society essences and Alaskan essences and Bach essences. They all had these beautiful affirmations that the producers created, and they're so divinely transmitted. You can feel that when you're reading them, and that really did help me understand um, how those plants work. And, sometimes poetry or writing can just capture something very numinous that because you're dealing with the mystery, that which cannot necessarily be named, and like this does that and this for that. That's not how these medicines work, right? And I am doing my best to help people access language from the heart space. We have more than we need from the ego in terms of manifesting and generating and producing. That's not what we're after here.
I I love all of this, and I would also affirm that like that's always been a big part of my practice too in creating a formula, is to create a resonant affirmation. And so, here we are in the same space of talking about connecting to the heart space as a like the words are a vehicle for that heart request,
Mhm.
or that heart intention, because what you were mentioning is that we have more than enough of the ego, of the intellective, and that's so funny that so often when I start to work with a client to create an intention, it feels like so much pressure at first. It's so interesting because people think that they have to do something really smart or something that's polished in a certain way, and then we start kind of playing our way through it. And a lot of us, especially those of us who've kind of come up in a new age, there are these affirmations that are very strong declarative sentences that don't resonate at all. that
Mhm.
there's something that you're trying to like force onto, and it feels like that's a really similar model of control, of an attempt to control instead of an attempt to find my way through and to have a conversation. And instead we're trying to force that onto ourselves. And so I love that we're talking about how to do this from a heart space, how to do this from a place that's true, something that's
Mhm.
really like poetry is really true on a level. It may
Mhm.
not be, the same sort of grammar as somebody might discuss, but there's a truth to it. It really runs through you and it helps you connect to that space that the flower has as well, and that they're
Mhm.
speaking the language of the heart and the language of that level of truth. So I don't know
Mhm.
where I'm going with all this, but I think it's like bringing the flowers in, or starting to bring the flowers in. Would you mind starting to share some of the flowers that you think of when you're connecting to this heart space?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I'm always kind of working with different essences. I think one that has been enduringly present for me with prayer and the heart is green rose, which is a flower essence society essence, as you know, and my work feels very connected to the heart and the earth, and that is one that I feel like is um, firmly connected and connecting both. Um, and then if I'm needing support in terms of accessing more like heart-centered language, I do love to call upon like Celandine or Cosmos or Iris. There's a Bach essence that's on the tip of my tongue. Can you help me? It's not
Perhaps
Larch.
Cerato? Oh,
Larch?
Larch too?
Yeah,
Sure.
Larch. Yeah, Larch. So, thank you. But definitely Cerato. Cerato and Angelica and rock water is a formula that I make for, usually I make for first time clients. Because I find that we want to encourage safety and feeling connected to your own intention, your own intuitions, and being able to trust yourself in this work and information from coming to come from different places. So yeah, I would consider Serato part of that as well.
I'd love to spend a few minutes unpacking that three-part formula with you, because there's so much there. And one other thing that we really try to do here is go into the next layer down into the essences, rather than creating big lists for people that feel overwhelming. I Can we start with Cerato? Do you see that as being, maybe Angelica would really be kind of like the top of the formula, if you see your formulas in that sort of um, list kind of
I
way?
do.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Let's
Yeah.
talk about Angelica first.
Yeah, I also visualize Angelica as like an oval, the auric field around a person. And I like Flower Essence Society Angelica. I also have Blossom Essence Angelica that's really beautiful, but I usually just use Delta Gardens Angelica. And according to David, this creates like a ceiling feel around the field, so a person feels very held and safe. And it also offers the connection to your guides. That's what Angelica is, and angels. And you know that flower is this beautiful white flower that opens up to the heavens, and it has that um, thick stalk. So that's the air element running through there. Um, it feels very safe. It feels very protective. And then Serato, yeah, like I said, for connecting to self-trust. I feel like that's more connecting to like the center of the body, maybe, is how I conceptualize that. And then rock water, yeah, the flexibility to start opening to this work. to maybe being guided from a different direction, or just like the openness and receptivity. And I really like starting off with Bach essences because I consider him to be the father of this work. So it just feels like a comfortable entry point to bring people into it.
And I love that you've included rock water into this combination because, if you're trained in, reading the books on the flower essences and you're looking at rock water, you probably wouldn't see that as being like a safe opening kind of an essence. It's described in a way of, for people who are rigid and kind of mentally inflexible. And yet, if you think about the signature of rock water, it's a sacred spring. It's a non, Dr. Bach intended that this remedy be made from a spring that didn't have a religious overlay on it, but just a really pure, beautiful spring that emerges out of the earth. And
Yes.
so for me, that's that connection to the earth. It's that connection to that new possibility. The water emerges out in a new chance. And I think that that's a fantastic idea of helping people to embrace that life force, that flow, that potential for change. That is
Mhm.
so perfect rock water. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel that way about rock water and water, just the water element. And yeah, coming out of the rock, and I mean, it technically is a gem essence. So I like that too, that it's kind of a hybrid. Yeah. And it was a pagan spring, which that's really cool.
Yeah, it made me also think of Rock Spring that Alaskan Essences has,
Mhm.
and that is kind of in the same vein that you're using it. It's really one for opening up to the possibility of hope and miracles. So it would be
Mhm.
a really lovely one for any kind of prayer or, situation that is bringing that water in and opening up, helping to open up and let flow and accept the abundance of nature. So I really love that too. That's a really sweet little combination. As you both were talking, it really struck me what a timely conversation this is. Not just for the time of year as we're heading into the winter solstice, and but also just the time that we're in. It feels like getting to a place of quiet is really important, and connection and finding one's own connection is like such a key right now with the bombardment of information from a million sketchy sources that constantly come at us. And I think I'm very interested in people develop, really wanting people to develop their own connection and into the divine for guidance. I think we really just really as a whole just need it's so needed right now. And the what we're talking about today with intentions and affirmations and all the ways that we can do that, I actually really love the frame of it being a prayer because there is something about that word that brings to it something special and sacred. There's a more it's bringing in a little bit more sacredness,
Mhm.
and yet this reframe that we're taking, this place that we're taking it, is we can do that however we connect to divinity. It doesn't have to be with a religion, for
Mhm.
example, right?
Right.
And so again, there's a lot of flower essences and gem elixirs that could be really helpful in that connection, just that
Mhm.
sacred, developing that sacred space and that connection. And one I like a lot is Calling All Angels
Mm. Mhm.
in the Alaskan Essences. It's such a sweet combo and especially great for children, but people of all ages. And it also has Angelica in it. So, I mean, that is like the top, of that formula, of that protection, of that guidance, of feeling held and feeling guided and developing that connection. But it also has Chalice Well in it. And I don't know if you've ever been to the Chalice Well, and I have not. It's on my bucket list, but it is a sacred space. And
Mhm.
speaking of, sacred wells and from the times of old, and, um, very powerful places on the planet, that water from the Chalice Well is offers up this matrix of support for
Mhm.
people and helps us to connect. And it also has the chiming bells flowers and the gem elixir of kunzite. And I really love bringing in the gem elixirs for this as well. And kunzite is back to we were talking about opening the heart and connecting, a really great one for that. And then it can help anchor in the divine connection into the heart space.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that much about kunzite. That's good to know. Yes, I love Chalice Well. I've been able to go there 2 times, and it's very, very magical. Definitely a power source, power spot on this planet, and um, yeah, this time of year is that's the winter solstice signature is stillness and going inward. And this is my favorite time of the year. I love the dark. I'm very comfortable. And I think it's interesting too to work with people who in our culture, it's we're such a sun obsessed, ascension obsessed culture. It's uncomfortable to get quiet, and it's not getting easier. Our connection to the earth, our source connection, is becoming more and more disturbed. Also, for complex trauma survivors, meditation, stillness, getting quiet, that can be really triggering. So it might be a practice, it has to be a practice that you practice and you work up to. But regardless of where you are, it is a worthwhile practice to take on. And this is the perfect time to be in the co-creative dream space and, lighting a candle, making some cinnamon tea, getting cozy, and getting creative.
It's such a strong draw. I feel the draw of that quietness, of trying to do less, of trying to sort of settle myself. It feels almost, I mean, not like a draw so much as absolutely essential for survival at this point,
Mhm.
to find ways to implement that into my life in any way that I can. And so I appreciate that you mentioned that, a sitting practice, and even a breathwork practice is something that those who have experienced complex trauma, really, let's take the should out of things, because a lot of folks on a healing path or on a development path feel like they should do that. Like, oh, I should, and they'll throw themselves into things. And that can really be destabilizing. So I love that you are amplifying that it's really important to titrate these things just slowly, gently, and finding little moments, and we can do that with the essences too, is to find a moment of just, picking your essence up in your hand, taking a little breath, saying an affirmation of something that's true for you, something that's actually really true. And it could just be like, I'm trying to find some peace. And, taking a little breath and taking your essence and just connecting into that, that's a little moment of meditation that you built into your day. And it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be, a 2 week silent retreat. It can just be a moment of regulating your nervous system. And the essences can always be there for that. Just a little moment.
Yes, exactly. as my teacher Jane would say, most of us are not monks living on the mountain. We are in in the world in a different way, and we all have busy lives, and it doesn't have to be some complicated, involved practice. It can be a micro choice. It can be a micro practice. And I always say find different ways in. If sitting in silence isn't for you, that's fine. Like maybe you need to listen to some ambient music. Maybe you need to walk and leave your phone at home, or maybe you need to like hold a stone or cuddle with your animal. Maybe you need something more tactile. Maybe you need to have a cup of tea. You can be creative with it, right?
Yeah, it take that should out of it. It
Yeah,
doesn't
just take the should
your
out.
get rid of the should. And I love that you're helping people build these experiences, and those are beautiful meditation practices and prayer practices in themselves. It doesn't have to look like somebody else's practice. It can be
Hmm.
100% yours.
Hmm.
And the way that it emerges organically from you is perfect.
Hmm. Yes, so well said.
This has been such a wonderful conversation that I think we could, do this for hours having this discussion. I wish we had all the time in the world because there's so many other essences that are in your book. And I encourage everyone who's listening to check it out. You have the physical book is a beautiful thing to hold in one's hand and a beautiful thing to just be able to open to a page and find something that you can create that moment with. And then also your audiobook is also beautifully narrated and your voice is so soothing and supportive. So I really want to appreciate that you brought this and birthed this into the world. And how do people find out more about your offerings? You have any classes coming up?
Yeah. So I'm planning an in-person like prayers for the new year event at the yoga studio I live near here in Brooklyn called Prema. And that is going to be sometime in mid to late January. And I'm also doing an event with Myths of Creation. And then in later in February, I'm also, I believe I'm doing like a seminar, professional seminar with Spirit Seed. And if you're not familiar, you know Lindsay's work. Yeah. Um, so that's going to be in February. So I think that's kind of a few things I have coming up. And I do have all of this information on my link tree, on my website. And yeah, I always look forward to hearing from people.
And I just wanted to ditto the sentiment about your book because I'm going to hold it up for those that might be looking at the video because it's just a really great little kind of size. It's got um that beautiful artwork that I believe is it the same artist that you had for the Bloom book?
Chelsea
Yeah.
Granger. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's so amazing.
And it's just a great little physical book, the way that it's been produced. So really appreciate that. And also that you thank you for creating an audiobook. I usually never have time to read full physical books, front to back. So if it's something I want to get all the words from, I get the audiobook and it's disappointing when there isn't one available. And not only did you have that available, but you're reading it and it is a great, great job on the narration.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you so much.
And is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with, leave the audience with? Any other plants that you want to bring in or just wisdom you'd like to impart? Anything?
Oh, I thought I could just share maybe a line of a few lines of prayer that I've been saying
Yeah. Yes.
recently. I have short prayers that I say and then longer form ones too, but something I try to pray for every day is may the hearts of all humans open and awaken to the interconnectedness and sacredness of all life. And I also am finding myself saying to myself, please show me how to make things easier on myself. And maybe a lot of us need to hear that, especially this time of year. It's okay to make things easier on yourself.
That was beautiful. Thank you for
Yeah.
spending time with us. Thank you for
Thank you
sharing.
so much for having me. It's so wonderful to connect with you as always.
It's been a real privilege and a pleasure to spend time with you again, Heidi.
Really lovely. Thanks.
Blessings.
We'll
Thank
see you again
you.
soon.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.